So, today, viewer discretion is advised. This week will be a tad more lean than typical reports because actually there's not much to talk about this week. At least nothing in the real big, you know,
Yeah,
controversy.
besides the normal stuff that you'd find in gaming, like, people upset about some stuff or maybe some of the normal rumors that someone thinks X game will be made after 20 years. Like, not really much is really going on. Like, really not much.
Yep. It's actually a pretty lean week, all things considered, which
So,
might be good for the companies, but terrible for the guy who reports on the companies, i.e. us. So,
you know.
yeah. So, on the topic of that, as he so greatly said, Ubisoft, depends who you ask. But anyways, there's a lot I could say about Ubisoft. Probably not a lot. Some of it not good, some of it good. It depends, again, on what you ask me about. But anyways, as he mentioned, Ubisoft is on the docket this week as one of the few things we have to talk about. Specifically, a project they're calling Assassin's Creed Infinite. And may I off the bat just say, what is it with people these days in calling their games Infinity or Infinite? It's
Well,
like they're running out of numbers, so they're just like
well,
1, 2, 5, Infinite.
I mean, when you really think about it, technically they are running out of numbers because there comes a point when you go and you're at the number of like game 30 that you're probably thinking to yourself, maybe my franchise is dead because, I'm obviously in the 30th segment of it and I probably have gone completely unoriginal and away from the original.
Either that or your Pokemon.
And you just keep turning objects into Pokemon.
You just
Prove me
keep
wrong. I dare you.
Prove me wrong.
I dare you. Sword and
Looks-
shield.
Looks at that table. Teldor.
That
looks
one
at the box.
Pokemon that can literally keep turning into any object it wants. Anyway.
Looks at it. Oh, this is your fault.
Oh,
You're the
yes.
reason it died. Says the guy who's like the massive Pokemon card collector. But anyways, and who plays the games. Still plays the games. I'm not ashamed to admit that.
Nah, it's fine. Anyways.
Yeah. You're either on the segment of your game where you either have your game on life support or your Pokemon or your Legend of Zelda. Either one.
Game?
Or
I just
Mario,
make
but
game.
Mario's more debatable.
Mario is literally just a platformer. You just jump from one end of the map to the other and just stomp on a few enemies, pick up a few items, and then just touch a flagpole. Like, that's literally
Really?
just Mario.
Really? I thought he was a plumber.
Oh, yes, I go into pipes just to go from point A to point B. That's it. I'm basically the equivalent of a sewer. I go from one area to the other.
Yeah, he cleans the pipes with his body. Why do you think he's so large? He just goes in and just he unclogs it with himself.
I am the unclogging.
I am the unclogging agent. Comes out the other side just covered in stuff. What is that? Don't ask.
You question my methods? I am a plumber.
Also, side note, why is the Mushroom Kingdom covered in plumbing? Who set up this kingdom?
Don't worry about it. It's all coming together, Luigi.
It's all coming
together.
Anyways, so back to Ubisoft. Infinity is an interesting concept. Actually, I didn't even know it existed until about like. Oh, fun fact! If I sound a little differently, it's because I have a little bit of a different setup, mic-wise.
Yes.
I have a different mic now, and I'm still getting used to it. And this is the first time we're using this new headset on the show. So if I sound a little differently, that's why. Paid a good chunk of money for it, so I hope I'm getting my money's worth.
As long as it ain't old, we should be fine. It shouldn't break down anytime soon. Looks to a headset that used to have a microphone on it.
Yeah, our co-host here can tell you all about it. The editor has some hell of story.
There's a reason why I have a good microphone and not a headset microphone.
Well, it's because you have space and I don't, so,
Well, that too, but also other reasons, particularly.
Mine is actually just hooked up here via wire, so it's not gonna break anytime soon. Hopefully, knock on wood.
Anyways, let's get back to the reason why we're
back
here,
to the
shall we?
back to the topic we've spent 10 minutes killing airtime for. Can you tell we're trying to fill content?
We're just trying to pass the time. We're a little bored.
Aren't we amusing? Anyways, infinity. So, infinity is the concept that they've developed, and what the frick is infinity? Well, good question. There's actually not much on it at the current moment because, again, all other than Ubisoft being like, it exists, we really don't know much about it. There is one mega leak from Reddit that is, according to the rumors, somewhat credible. Probably some guy who's like working in the project himself. Again, it's really early stages, so I wouldn't be surprised.
I believe this means a resource grab.
I mean,
So,
I'm willing to bet, right off the bat, Assassin's Creed, at least of the later games, kind of became more and more open world esque. So not all of them, but some had like a bit of open world esque to it.
Hey, you.
So
I'd expect
I'm willing to bet, at least to an extent, that, you know,
they've been open world for a long time now, and that's their kind of motto.
yeah.
What you have seen the switches of the last 3 games is a switch from the less what they call Hitman aesthetic, which is basically kind of like what you see in the Hitman franchise, the new one, where you can just one-shot insta-kill people. You know, kind of realistically, if you shoot someone in the head,
Well,
they're gonna die.
Kind of
surprising.
Kind of seems reasonable for, you know, an assassination game, but you know.
But now they've been switching to more of an RPG aesthetic, which, you know, depending on who you ask, they either love it or they hate it. Personally, I don't mind the new aesthetic, especially because it makes more sense in the newer games. Like, here's the thing. If you're going to do an assassination-based game, but with RPG mechanics, it doesn't make sense if I'm slitting people's throats and then they turn around and proceed to attack me with a sword. How are you still alive?
Yes, allow me to slowly insert this knife into your neck. Now, continue shooting me, please.
You may continue to attack me now. Though in their credit, to Ubisoft's credit, they have attempted to make it a little more, I don't want to say realistic. Like, okay, the first concept was Odyssey, or Origins, my bad. Origins basically is the origins of the Assassin's Creed, as per the namesake, obviously. So you see the Hidden Blade, it's not as refined back then, you know, they're still developing their technique. But it doesn't make a ton of sense why sometimes you're like, yeah, in the neck, and then they turn around and attack you. It's still a good aesthetic because I love ancient Egypt and Egypt mythology, but some of the logic of the actual game can be a little like, okay.
Excuse me?
To their credit, the one they did after that followed up on it, was Odyssey, and this one takes place in ancient Greece, way before Origins even. And by the way, for those who know the storyline of Assassin's Creed, both of these games you do not fight the Templars because back then they weren't called Templars because Templars didn't exist yet. Nope, they were called something else. The first game, they were called the Order of the Ancients. That's actually their actual proto name. In Odyssey, you fight a version, not of them, but a type of cult similar to them called the Cult of Cosmos, who, story reasons, they're not the same. They get absorbed eventually. Anyways, moving on.
Side plot. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry about it. The logic here is, though, that they did try to rectify it and make it a little more understandable why there's an RPG mechanic. Because, again, this is way before the Assassins existed. You don't even have the Hidden Blade because it doesn't technically exist yet in, like, more modern common tense. I mean, there is one person who you eventually learn has it in the DLC, but again, side plot, never mind. You actually have the Spear of Leonidas, which is kind of their version of the Hidden Blade in this one, where you just kind of go and you like smash people in the chest with it and stuff like that. So, Plus, the character you're playing is a Spartan during the Peloponnesian War, so it makes more sense why they're more combative and less, quiet stealth kind of shit. Because, have you ever heard of a Spartan being quiet? My best guess, no.
I'm willing to bet if a proper actual Spartan was going quiet, he's probably going quiet. That way he can get into the middle of the enemy and brutally murder them all together, all at once. Because blood for the blood god.
Blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne. Wait, wrong continuity.
fades
Corn
out of
just gets some.
existence for being unconventional to proper game.
Nah, just Corn now exists in the AC universe, confirmed. This changes everything. Um, but yeah, no, there are stealth mechanics still, like the originals. You do have the stealth, you do have the assassinations. They're sometimes not one-hit kills depending on the level of the characters, because again, RPG mechanics be like that, but they more lean into the RPG mechanics of combat and stuff like that, because again, you're a Spartan. The third one, the most recent one, which is the whole root of everything nowadays, the most recent one. Again, I've played all of these, by the by,
Hmm.
so I can speak from experience and like what they're like. Is Assassin's Creed Valhalla, keeping with the tradition of the RPG mechanics. You in Valhalla, guess what you play as? A Viking. So again, it makes sense why you are more, than dun 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 dun, with the hidden blade, if you know what I mean. So it makes more sense why you're brute force and less quiet.
Yeah.
But in fairness, during this time in the kind of continuity of the story, the hidden blade has existed. The hidden ones do exist. Fun fact: the assassins, like the Templars, were not originally called the Templars. They were originally called the Hidden Ones. During this time in the history of the game series, they were still called the Hidden Ones because, again, the Crusades hadn't happened yet. They didn't switch to becoming assassins, and the Templars didn't switch to becoming the Templars. So it's still the Hidden Ones versus the Order of the Ancients.
Mm-hmm.
So you fight the quote-unquote Order of the Ancients as not a hidden one yourself. This is actually kind of the running theme that newer games have as well, where you're not... Well, the first one, you are literally the founding father of the assassins, so technically you are and not an assassin at the same time, because at the end of the game you end up founding them, so I don't know if that counts. So...
We'll see.
But the second two games, again, you are so far behind the actual existence of the hidden ones that obviously you're not one of the assassins. In this one, you're not an official assassin, but you do allow them to kind of take up shelter among your group. So, and you end up getting a hidden blade for story reasons. It's a gift. Again, it's a
It is.
You get one, you end up having them take shelter, but you're technically not on the payroll, so to speak.
Yes.
But the more you do quests for them, the more they teach you their stuff. So it's kind of an indoctrination almost. Anyways.
Spartan become assassin.
Honestly, that is literally how it was. The last game, you are a Spartan. This game, now you're a Viking.
Well,
also, both of them, you're an assassin.
We will have to see what Ultimate has to bring then.
Infinity, you mean?
Yes.
Ultimate. We're...
Well, no, I said it. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Really, it's just ridiculous.
I've confused the
naming.
editor, ladies and gentlemen.
It's just really... Well, no, you're not the one confusing. They're the ones confusing me. Because at this point, it's like, why can't you just stay with numbers? You're better off just sticking with the, yes, I am at edition 30 of my game.
Well, they haven't had the numbers, in fairness, for a while now, and
yeah,
Infinity is only the code name of the project. We don't actually know what's officially going to be called.
Assassin's Creed has kind of been the one that just deviated to the whole, yes, I'm just going to go with completely different names, different locations.
I think
Hopefully I don't run out of good ideas and places to go to, but we'll be fine.
Well, that's the kind of content of this, or not the content, the thing about right now. They've kind of brought the game full circle, as one commenter actually saw in a video. I was watching all this on Open World Gaming. Shout out to him, where I was originally hearing about this. And said, the kind of problem they're facing right now, Ubisoft being, and... Sorry, I'm getting used to this. I'm hearing my own voice muffled because I've got these massive headphones on. It'll take a while to get used to. My brain just registered, why is my voice sounding muffled? This is going to take a little bit to get used to. Anyways.
I'm hearing my voice twice. It hurts. My brain can't handle the power.
Too many of meat. But, yeah. So, the thing is right now, what was I on about? Oh, yes. The whole thing right now is that it was originally, like, I think Revelations or Syndicate that switched over from, like, the numbers to the names. Or maybe it was actually all the way back in Brotherhood. So they've been doing this naming convention for a while now.
A little bit, yeah.
But even in Assassin's Creed Black Flag, they still had, like, 4. After that, they stopped doing it. I think it was, like, Syndicate where they officially dropped the number scheme and just started doing names. But, again, like, one of the comments was that they brought it full circle, right? They've went all the way up until the closest to the modern day they have, where is the Industrial Revolution in London during like 1899, I believe. And then the furthest in the past
Well,
they've gone is like the Peloponnesian War.
technically, if you count the
Greece.
whole fact that technically they're all simulations for the most part, and you're
Yeah,
just
they're all
playing
simulations,
as technically some guy from the future, currently technically around our time, then I guess you could count that, but that's kind of just a given for the Assassin's games, because
Well, I mean, that's the
they're
thing.
all just kind of visions basically for this guy to go and learn how to be proper assassin without actually going to the actual people.
Well, he died long ago. Now it's a new main target they
Oh.
have for the protagonist.
There you go.
It has to do with Atlantis and a staff, and again, maybe I'll explain it later. But again, so anyways, the concept is that Assassin's Creed has always tried to keep to modern events. So like, for example, funny enough, in Valhalla they actually reference COVID in game in like the modern day. What Ubisoft loves to do with the Assassin's Creed games is they keep the present in the actual present, and they'll sometimes reference events in our world in their game to kind of keep that sense of immersion for the present day. And then the Animus is just that person going back into the past, and finding some person that may or may not have something to do with the Assassin Order, and play through their life and their memories and stuff like that. So it's kind of this duality of back then and right now. But the concept is that while the present can always keep going, because the apocalypse hasn't happened yet, and there's still a world to work with.
We still have land. We're good.
We still have land.
The oceans haven't taken over, and the fungi haven't resided.
Though funny enough, in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, there's actually like another solar flare apocalypse happening, which is a plot of the game trying to stop. But anyways, moving on. In the past, they've kind of brought the game full circle. Like I said, they've gone all the way forward in time to the Syndicate era with, Industrial era London, and they've gone all the way back into the past with the Peloponnesian War of ancient Greece, and they've kind of they went furthest into the future, and then they went back into the far past, and now they've kind of come back to that point where, as one commenter said, the Crusades, so the plot of AC1, is actually not too far off from where the Valhalla timeline is. Maybe like 50 years or something.
So
or maybe not even that, like 100 years or something like that. So it's not that far off. So technically they brought the game full circle. So it's like, okay, now where do we go next? We've talked about pirates, we've talked about like Vikings, we've talked about like Spartans, and we've talked about crime gangs in the height of London, and a bunch of stuff.
We're running out of topics. Don't worry.
We're running out of fun topics to work with. One of them that everyone's actually saying, hey, why don't we do a samurai one? Because Japan and Japanese mythos actually lends themselves very nicely to the Assassin's Creed universe being, assassins. You'd think ninjas would be a very prime candidate there.
Literally just, no. We will not.
Honestly, when freaking Ghost of Tsushima came out, everyone looked at Ubisoft and was like, see, this is the Assassin's Creed you refuse to give us in Japan.
We will not. We must go to Rome.
To Rome again. Next Assassin's Creed, World War II. Honestly, I can see them doing that. Actually, they've actually kind of. Here's the fun
I'll be
fact.
honest.
They
I
kind of did that.
I have a
they
feeling they would do probably the Holy Roman Empire before they would do World War II. The Holy Roman Empire would probably be a good time to go in.
I mean,
and
they
be
already
yes,
kind of did that with Ezio. Well, then again, that was more Italy after the fall of Rome and Christianity. So
yeah, but that was like the fall of like the Roman Empire. Like I'm talking about like the Holy Roman Empire.
That was during the Renaissance.
The one made by the Germans, basically.
I was not aware of that. That is not.
I have a feeling the Holy Roman Empire was made by the Germans, because I mean it resided a fair bit within Germany, so
Either that, or you're talking about something that's about 3,000 years apart, compared to what you're actually referencing. But
history be like we go back and forth so quickly in the Assassin's Creed universe. You don't know where you are, when you are, because we just gonna go on without you again. Your brain will not handle the amount of history.
Anyways, here's the thing. They've kind of done that. Like, here's the thing. In the Helix missions in Assassin's Creed Unity, there was actually parts where you were playing in the French Revolution, right? That was the main game set in Unity. Yeah, but there were actually missions that took place where, again, because story reasons, you were teleported to World War II during the time of the assassins taking place in France. Because again, the whole game in Unity is set in France, but your character suddenly goes forward in time, or not your character, but you as the protagonist in the modern day go forward in time or back in time. Anyways, you end up
Are you
in.
confused yet?
Anyways, the point is that you get rocketed forward in time from the French Revolution to World War II taking place in France. So technically, they have played around with the idea of doing like Assassin's Creed in World War II, but I don't know if that would work out well. I mean, there's an interesting plot you could work there with like someone on like the Ally side or the German side.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe an assassin going after Hitler because Hitler was a Templar, which actually would explain a lot, really.
Ah, yes, every single reason why this happened. Summed up in
Literally.
5 seconds.
Literally, the Templars in Assassin's Creed are basically the Illuminati, so it would make a lot of sense. But that's kind of their whole goal too. It's like control the world from the shadows. So basically, they're the Illuminati. That's the easiest way to explain things.
Yeah.
But there's this new concept that Ubisoft is playing around with the idea of the new kind of storyline is like, oh, the Templars are not right, but neither are the assassins, because back in Odyssey, I may have mentioned Atlantis as a subplot, and you actually do go to Atlantis in Odyssey, and it's actually pretty nice, pretty area.
Well,
Props
I
to
mean,
the
that's
local
kind of
dragons.
how Atlantis is summed up in all of its stories ever. It's a nice
Just
place.
pretty.
So, you know.
So anyway, as I take a drink,
So,
you go to Atlantis, and the whole point is that the Isu, which is the first civilization, which again is the whole crux of the Assassin's Creed universe, and da 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 da. They're like, okay, you're you know of the assassins, the present you, not the you you're playing as in the Animus. They're like, you know of the assassins, right? Well, here's the thing: the assassins are not right. They want to liberate everything, but that's only going to create anarchy. Well, actually, what they do first is they send you to. It's actually kind of funny how the Fall of Atlantis, or I think is what the DLC is called, takes place, which is basically you go through 3 versions of levels. The first is you go through Elysium, which for those who don't know is basically not the movie, but the but it's actually kind of think of it like the Greek-Roman version of heaven, where only the greatest legends of the Greek and Roman Empire ever go there. You know, that's where you'll find Hercules, and that's where you'll find a lot of great Greek heroes like I can't remember what some of them now. But anyways, that's where you'll find the great heroes of Greece. It's basically heaven for Rome.
yes.
But the whole shtick there is that one of the Isu is ruling it like a totalitarian ruler. So basically, what the Templars want to do. And they're like, oh, well, you know, see this issue? This is what happens when you have totalitarian rule. It does not bring peace. It just brings
Well, I mean,
problems and
it's a
hate.
back and forth when you really think about it. You go and create a system that creates too much control. You're gonna have people who want freedom, but then you create a
Yeah.
system that has too much freedom. You're gonna want people who want control. Like,
Well, it's less that. It's like, oh, here's a system that's...
like by control, I mean like a stabilized control. Like that way, it's not
Ah.
complete anarchy.
So stability, insane?
Yeah,
So
basically.
stability is perhaps a better word to explain it.
Yeah,
but
but
yeah.
still, like
It's like, yeah,
it's
like...
a back and forth between the two.
It's like, oh, you Templar. It's like, oh, you know the Templars are bad. They are bad because this is what totalitarian rule would look like. Basically, just a police state. And here's what. And then they send you to the underworld, which, for those who don't know, Elysium is actually in the underworld, but it's like, think of it like the 9 layers of hell, where Elysium is like near the top, and it's like heaven-ish, and then everything after that is just the regular underworld you hear of in Greek mythology. You know, fire, death, destruction. You know,
Yada
the
yada.
usual
The
thing.
abyss, the abyss that.
Abyss that, abyss this, Cerberus here, Cerberus there. You know how it works. Anyways. And the rest of it is underworld. And there you meet Hades. And Hades' whole role is he's like, oh, here's the underworld, and it's complete anarchy. And, you know, it's basically what the assassins want. Their whole role here is, hey, the assassins aren't right either, because they'll basically just create anarchy.
Yes.
And so then, after you finish that level, you go to Atlantis. Which is, I'm not too sure the whole point of that one. I think it's just like you as the person you're not going to rule the world, but you know, I'm not too sure what the whole overall message from that one is. Maybe it's just a gift to just go to Atlantis. I don't know. But anyways, so
There's
what the
some
fuck was the
memes.
point of me explaining all that lore to you and not actually talking about Infinite?
Because Assassin's
Good question.
Creed just constantly goes on, constant plot changes, but some parts of the main story might be there. You just gotta kind of dig for it a little bit sometimes.
Well, my whole reason for explaining everything here is that what they're trying to do in the more recent games is explain that neither the Assassins nor the Templars are right, and there needs to be a mixture of freedom and control in the world for there to be peace. Otherwise, nothing is going to ever actually be perfect. It's just going to be war in different ways. So it's going to be interesting to see how they play that off in later installments of Infinity and stuff like that.
We'll
So,
see.
back to Infinity itself, though. I told you this was a lean episode, and I'm not
It's
lying. I'm
going
doing
to
this
be
in a way to
lean.
fill time. Truth be told, the whole shtick of Infinity is that, according to an article by GameSpot, again, I'll link in the description, according to Yves Guillemot, the head CEO of Ubisoft, he says that it's not going to be a free-to-play.
Hmm.
So, the minute he says not free-to-play, it's going to be one of those big MMO games. According to them, it's going to be the next big Assassin's Creed game. While it is not a free to play, it is going to be a huge game featuring everything fans love, quote unquote. Which is basically marketing speak for, hey, we're going to recycle all the old content.
Yeah, you know. Why
Which,
not?
if you know Ubisoft isn't surprising because, as one of the commenters on, like I said, the video I was watching, again, shout out to Open World Games, the guy who I was watching it on, this really fits with Ubisoft's copy paste model of do nothing originally and just copy paste everything.
recreate. Everything will be fine.
In fact, one of the points he brought up in that video is that it might be what they might do with Infinity, what they kind of did with Warzone, and just make it like this long-running game that, the multiplayer version of the game that they just kind of box in with all the new entries of the actual game itself, which is concerning in a way because then they might just lean on this. The logic you'll start seeing when we go into the more details of like the leaks, which I'm bringing up now, which is really the only concrete evidence on anything we have for Infinity, is that basically Ubisoft wants to find a way if they can make a bigger game that makes more money with less work.
Yes.
So, according to the leak, again in the description, posted by a Smooth Earth 16 days ago, wonderful name by the way, apparently he has information around it, and he might be involved in the project, he might not. So
We'll see. I mean,
it might be fake, it might not.
Yeah, it's so early on that it's just one of those things where it's like, maybe, but
Some of,
give it a couple months, maybe a year at most.
yeah, like some of the things he mentions in the leak are the game is in very early in development phase. Anything can change at any time. That he's been made aware of. Ideas are big and unfiltered right now, so some things I mentioned probably won't make it into the final game, which makes sense. According to him, the game structure is inspired by the new Hitman trilogy and the black box system used in both Unity and Syndicate during the mid-2010s, so when the games came out. Ubisoft was considering taking the franchise in a similar direction, but this changed after the failure of both of those games. I knew Unity failed, I didn't know Syndicate failed, interestingly. But the idea is being revived due to the recent popularity of Unity on Uplay and on Steam. It is also believed this formula will allow Ubisoft to increase profits while doing less work.
Yes.
Which, again, is very much in line with what Ubisoft wants. So I can believe that.
Well, it's better off just being simplistic and unoriginal than create something new.
Well, here's another piece he mentions. The game will not focus on a single assassin and will release excuse me, will instead release for free with a number of smaller stories, each featuring a different assassin. After the initial release, additional stories will be available for a currency, undefined amount. So basically,
Money.
you buy them. Basically, you buy them. Included in these stories may be reimagined versions of older games using only a few of their best levels. If these games are included, they will most likely not be included in the free version of Infinity. So again, they're basically trying to make Assassin's Creed MMO here, if you kind of get where everything is going. One of the other lines he mentions is, at this time, Ubisoft acknowledges the difficulty with storytelling using this method, i.e. storytelling methods need to be confined, to smaller cutscenes set between each level. Ubisoft is considering methods to tackle this issue, but is willing to accept this and tell shallower stories in the future. They are also discussing about supplementing missing moments with comics or other smaller, similar methods of written story.
That's already gonna create problems, my guy. that there's been a few games that just go and try to bring up story, but not do it properly, and just a lot of it's through the comics and whatnot, and you think you're getting the story, but you're not, because it's all in the comics, and like major points are from the comics, but not too many people looked at it.
We'll see how it goes.
I mean, it
Anyways,
depends
another
on
points-
how it's connected. Like if they do it in a nice way, like they don't make like super major events in the comics, then it should be fine.
We'll see how it plays out, honestly. Anyways, another of the things he mentions is that Infinity will essentially be a reboot of the Assassin's Creed franchise. Many of the defining moments of the series will remain the same, but conflicting story events or stories entirely that are widely disliked will either be retold or removed entirely for the new continuity. So basically, they're trying to clean up the storyline. Makes sense. You have a very old story game. Sometimes you make things that don't always jibe with each other. Anyways, another thing he mentions at the end is that Infinity will is not just a game host, but will also host a number of Assassin's Creed based projects at this time. Ideas are being discussed, but I'm not sure what this will include. I would speculate this includes visual or written media other than video games. I'm not aware of other games in the Assassin's Creed franchise being developed or even discussed.
Yeah. Well, gaming. Gaming.
He mentions at the end that he has apparently heard rumors about a Splinter Cell game using a Hitman design philosophy. He says he cannot comment on himself because he doesn't have any information regarding the Splinter Cell franchise, but maybe that's a thing in the boardrooms they're discussing.
Yeah.
So
I mean, a lot of it would have to be up in the air right now. Like, I'm willing to bet they probably have an idea on how they're gonna get some of the main story parts. It's just they gotta get like the majority of the plot and story. They probably have to figure out like what kind of area they want to go to for this one. Like, it's
if they like one of the things he says is that they'll be using multiple assassins, maybe from multiple time periods as well. One of the things I'm thinking of is like, what's that one? Assassin's Creed Legends, I think it's called, or something like that, where they have like multiple assassins from like multiple different time periods. Like one is ancient China, another one is like Russia during the not Cold War era, but during the Soviet Union. So stuff like that.
We'll
He
see.
says one of the he says one of the concerns with this entry is that it may not be as profitable or as popular as modern Assassin's Creed games. According to him, they do not wish to completely abandon the current formula for this reason. Another open-world RPG, Assassin's Creed, which started development long before the Unity idea came about, actively in development alongside Infinity. Should Infinity meet Ubisoft's financial target, it will be the last using the open-world RPG structure. So by the looks of this, it sounds like they don't want to completely abandon the idea of mainline Assassin's Creed games. They're just developing Infinity alongside them. And it seems that if this game meets their financial target, it'll be the last to use the open world RPG kind of format. So they might go back to the more confined traditional structure of assassination, less RPG, more stuff like that.
Yeah.
More, one hit killing on guards and stuff like that. More linear stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I personally like the way the RPG mechanics are right now. One of the things I really didn't like, which actually I was going to bring up before, was both in Odyssey and in Origins, they have the idea that loot is plentiful and you just pick it up off guards and stuff like that. So you'd end up getting like 1,000 of one weapon and stuff like that. So weapons started losing meaning after a while.
Yeah.
But I mean, it makes sense for for at least Odyssey, because in the Bronze Age, weapons were mass produced and were made to break after like 3 battles. So it makes sense like 1,500 of them would be like strewn all over the place. But interestingly enough, they did actually make fun of it in Valhalla, where weapons are actually things you get for looting special chests that you find in the world. And so instead of like collecting like 1.5 million same armor pieces, like midway through the game, maybe you'll have like 12 different armor sets that you collect from all over, and they're all different with like different aesthetics and different-ish stats and stuff like that. So there's more of a, attachment to your weapons and armor. And you can actually feel more, especially like, I like this gun. And actually, they do poke fun out of it, where one of the junk items you can collect in the game is called broken armor, and the flavor text is, and this is why we don't wear what we loot. So,
Allow us to get meta.
yeah. So at least they're acknowledging the kind of stupidity of that in a way.
We'll see. We'll see. Like, really, that's the major part. It's like there's so early of rumors that it verges on like the same kind of level as like so many people talking about X, Y, and Z games possibly going and getting another remake or a new addition to the franchise or something, but it never happens. Like, I have a feeling they might be making another game, just not so early on.
Well, actually, in a recent earnings call, which is actually very recently, they actually released that. We were actually talking about this before the stream, you and I. That Assassin's Creed Valhalla is now Ubisoft's second largest profit-generating game in history. At least in the Assassin's Creed franchise, I believe. Yeah, Ubisoft said in November 2020 that the 12th major installment in the franchise sold more units in its first week than any other entry in the series, which had at the time sold over 155 million units since debuting in 2007. As of today, it is said Valhalla has been outperforming its predecessor Assassin's Creed Odyssey across the board since its release, which apparently was their other biggest selling game. Ubisoft recently revealed Assassin's Creed Valhalla is set to receive a second year of expansions, a first for the series, and confirmed that a new project, again codenamed Infinity, is in the works. So this is also where they confirmed Infinity is a thing now.
Yeah.
And that second half of DLC should be arriving, according to them, by the... Let me see here. Great new content for the second year, notably in the second half of the current fiscal year, ending on March 31st, 2022. So expect DLC by March 31st of next year. So clearly the RPG format is working for them. And again, there's something else I have here, what that next major expansion could be, which is Dawn of Ragnarok. It makes sense because they actually hinted that they might want to play with the idea of the expansion being, instead of like an Odyssey where you went to Atlantis, this time you go to Asgard, which you actually kind of do in the game itself through like dream sequences, but those are more hallucinogenic drug-induced sequences.
You know.
So they're not actually Valhalla. They're not actual Valhalla. Where, okay, here's the thing. In the Assassin's Creed games, what they like to do is they like to be like, oh, all these great historical items like the Sword of Excalibur, the Excalibur sword, and like the Sword of Sugar, and the Golden Fleece, which heals all wounds, and it's like, yeah, those are all pieces of Eden. They were all Isu-Tech. So think of it kind of like, in a way, what Halo does with the Forerunners, where it's like, see all these cool things? Yeah, they're all Forerunner tech. The Forerunners are the greatest Deus Ex Machina of the universe. Yes. If it doesn't exist, it's probably Forerunner tech. I think the editor can confirm that.
Yes, to an extent. To an extent.
And the idea is that again, the new logic of the three games isn't just the idea of the Assassins and the Templars not both being wrong to certain degrees, they're also seeing if they can bring the Isu back into the game as a more physical force. So what you end up doing is, like, again, you went to Asgard, you went to Atlantis, which actually turned out to be an Isu city way back in the day. And I'm sure Asgard will also turn out to be an Isu city way back in the day. So it's like, if it's a mythical place that may have existed, it was probably an Isu city long ago. I'm just waiting for the day when they're like, ah, yes, the heaven in Christian mythology is also an Isu city. Why not? I was baptized. I can make that joke, I think.
I follow the rules. Don't worry.
And there goes our Christian audience.
Removal has been detected.
The frick was that?
The audience disappearing.
The audience disappearing. There goes our 12 subscribers, damn it. There goes...
They no longer exist in this metaphysical plane.
But anyways, so that's the kind of concept they're going with, of like bringing the Isu back in a more physical force. You know, swords of, the sword of Excalibur was actually an Isu sword. The, golden fleece which heals all wounds was a piece of Eden. Well, technically anything that's an Isu bit of tech is technically a piece of Eden. That's that's more of an overarching, like, term than anything else. But it's like, oh, Excalibur, piece of Eden. Thor's hammer, piece of Eden. Golden fleece, piece of Eden.
Yes.
Atlantis, Isu city.
We got this.
Which for those,
it's okay.
Which for those who don't know is basically the Isu are basically the precursors, which are basically going back to the Halo reference, basically Assassin's Creed version of the Forerunners without the precursor war and shit like that. Actually, the war is replaced with a war with humanity, which lore reasons they don't exist anymore. Basically,
well,
the
technically
precursor
they killed themselves, but
I mean,
sacrifice in a weird way.
In this case, it was more the Isu created humanity as a slave labor force, and then they created Adam and Eve as kind of hybrids between themselves and humanity, and it's played off that the reason humanity is so hyper-religious to the gods is that the Isu actually made humanity that way so they could be more easily controlled, because it's much more easy to make people do things when they think you're a god.
Yes.
Which to some extent is true.
My god
So
is
I
here.
can see the logic.
He exists for me.
So that's kind of why humanity is so hyper-religious, though admittedly that kind of ended up biting them in the ass at the end of the day, because there was a great apocalypse involving the sun that happened, and they were so busy caught up in the war against humanity that actually were spurred on by the creation of Adam and Eve, which were, again, the hybrid of Isu and human DNA, which was smart enough to be like, you're not our god, and take the pieces of Eden and wield them for themselves, such as the apples of Eden, which are basically things that allow them to mind control humans and force them to do their bidding. Well, less mind control.
The reason why you weren't allowed to touch the apple.
Honestly, they literally coded it so that only their genetics can use the apple and humanity cannot. And so that's why Adam and Eve were so dangerous, because they had enough Isu blood that they could use the pieces of Eden, and they're like, oh no, what have we done?
A flaw in an otherwise perfect plan.
So they caused humanity to rebel, and actually, in a way, the whole Garden of Eden scenario is actually in the Assassin's Creed game, because the logic is that, Adam and Eve were not created by God, they were created by the Isu as a hybrid between humanity and the Isu, and the whole reason that Adam and Eve technically are kicked out of the quote-unquote garden is because humanity is like, we don't want to live here anymore, you're making us slaves, and rebellions, and that happened, and da-da-da-da-da.
Get out! If you wish not to serve, then you wish not to live.
Honestly, that logic was that, there was a war with humanity, and there was a great catastrophe with the sun, but they were so busy in the war that they couldn't actually, think of a solution for the sun in time, and they ended up, going extinct because, fun fact, while the Isu created humanity as an inferior to themselves in mental terms, physically speaking, humanity was made to be more hardy than them, so they were able to survive the apocalypse in much greater numbers than the Isu were. Or I think it's like after the apocalypse, only like a few thousand Isu survived, whereas like humanity was like several tens of thousands, so they were able to repopulate.
We will
So the
outpopulate you.
So the East were like, okay, I guess we're fucked. You're now our descendants, and they tried to breed with humanity to kind of give them their good genes, to kind of breed out the the stupidity they intentionally made humans have. Which is actually explained why humanity and the assassins have eagle vision, because it's one of the tricks that was bred into them by the Isu. So,
Wonderful,
yada yada store reasons.
wonderful story.
Hey, I'm a lore nerd. I can do this shit.
Hey, I'm not saying lore is unwanted. Lore is lore.
But yeah. So that's why that's a thing. And that's why humanity is aware of things like Asgard and Atlantis, because once upon a time they were ancient Isu cities. But because humanity is hyper-religious, which, as I mentioned, ended up biting them in the ass, because it's hard to be like, humans, fire is not magic. Yes, my god, it is magic. You are holy. Yeah, it's hard to convince people when that's the mentality. I think they admit that it did end up kind of biting them in the ass at the end of the day.
That's something that control freaks don't pay attention to.
Yeah, it's like, they tried to uplift humanity, and then they're like, oh wait, we made you to be hyper-religious and very stupid. Ah, shit.
We've made some mistakes, you and I. Don't worry about it. What do you mean, you and I? You're the one who
Don't
did
worry.
this to me.
Honestly, that's the logic. That's the unfortunate part. It was made to originally make humans more submissive and easy to control, but unfortunately, it also made it very hard for them to be uplifted when, the Isu were like, okay,
Everything went and
everything
fell
went to
apart,
shit.
as it always does.
As it always does. Think of it in terms of Halo, if the Forerunners actually were, like, actually trying to uplift humanity. They're like, hey, we'll teach you things.
technically, that's kind of what happened, because the Forerunners did go and devolve humanity, because humanity existed the same time as the Forerunners originally. But
Yeah,
the
they
only
were
reason
just
why
as
humans
smart.
are as tech savvy as they are as the Forerunners is because
Devolved them out of spite.
basically. And then eventually, when it was too late, the Forerunners were like, oh yeah, no, we should probably uplift you a little bit. And yeah, it wasn't so easy. So instead, they kind of went with the whole, okay, we'll just kind of give you access to all of our tech, because we can't really fix what we've done.
Yeah. That was the kind of logic of the Isu. They're like, okay, because of the genetic locks, we're going to breed with you now to give you our DNA so you can at least use this stuff. Because, fun fact, the Isu were so technologically advanced, they could create computers that could literally predict the future to such a degree, you could literally leave a recording for someone, like 100,000 years in the future. They would find it, and it would be so accurate a prediction that it would almost feel like you're having a conversation with an actual person, where in reality it's just a recording they left behind.
Yes.
That is how accurate their prediction software was. So they were uber intelligent, but a little fragile.
Cost. It's fine.
It's fine.
A small price to pay for success.
So yeah, that ended up happening. So the Isu spent the next there's also this side plot they introduced, kind of again going back to the Halo reference, where originally it was thought that all the Isu were like just corrupt and didn't really care about humanity, and that they were only kind of used as a successor, as a last resort, because they're like, well, fuck, we're dead. You get our stuff. You get our stuff. Where it's turned out actually that there were some Isu that actually didn't hate humanity and actually sympathized with them as being slaves, and there was this whole civil war that happened, and it's yada yada yada, and one of them rebelled and implanted her consciousness into a supercomputer, and she's still alive because of it. And it's
A
complicated.
whole lot of plot when it comes to Assassin's Creed games.
Kind of like in Halo, where it's turned out that not all the Forerunners were just, we don't like humanity. There was actually a subset that were like, no, we like humanity.
Yeah, you realize humanity was right, It's fine, we still hate them.
All you hear is, silence, liberal!
Silence, mortal! You know not of the power our enemy holds.
Just insert that meme right there. It's like, we sympathize with humanity. Silence, the liberal!
Silence, human sympathizer.
Oh my god. Insert that meme in both these scenarios. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's I mean, that's the big thing is we know for sure how the story's been so far, and we'll have an idea on like some of the plot that might come, but we really aren't really gonna know some of the more major stuff that would have to encase with this. Because I mean, if it's going to be an open-esque kind of multiplayer game, I don't know, MMO type thing, then chances are it's more of just a money grabbing thing and not an
Oh, I'm
actual
sure.
let's do lore thing.
I mean, like, one of the comments I read is, if I can actually get my phone real quick because I left it on the charger. Hold on a minute. As
Let
it
me
boots up.
get my communicator of the devices.
My communicative device. The logic here is that, like, oh, you know, Ubisoft is creating an MMO. That cannot be good because they will explode it to hell and back.
Yeah.
I mean, we already kind of see what they're doing in the new games with like purchasing to like get more resources and get like a permanent XP boost and stuff like that. While they haven't hampered XP in the base game, they're like, oh, you can buy to get like a double XP boost throughout the entire game. I wouldn't get that purely because number one, obviously it's greedy and I shouldn't support that. But number two, I feel that it's less to do with I like a challenge and less like out of integrity's sake, I wouldn't do that because, like, why would I want to fast track myself through a game? I play the game to enjoy myself, not to get through it faster. It's not a chore that I have to do.
Yeah.
One of the things actually someone wrote is Daniel Rea. Again, this is all from Open World Games video, which I actually heard all this from. In his comment section, he says the older style of AC games get stale and boring so quick. I only came back to the franchise because of the RPG style. So I played the older games too. I played AC3, AC2. Well, I believe AC2. Was it AC2, Brotherhood, Revelations, and then AC3? I think. Yeah, no. It was 2 Brotherhood, 3 Revelations. No, it was 2 Brotherhood Revelations, and then 3. Again, way back in the day, the naming ones were just more of like offshoots of a character's story, and then they went back to the mainline numbers, and then they just scrapped the numbers entirely. But anyways.
It is what it is.
I can see why people would say that, the original style would get boring after a while because you were just basically knifing everyone in the back.
Yeah, and I mean it doesn't completely go and make sense within like the universe because eventually people would be like, okay, clearly this isn't effective enough. We need a better strategy. But
Like, one of the
it also doesn't make sense that like you knife a guy, in the spine, and man don't die.
one of the long comments on that video was like, the real Misawa, I believe you're pronouncing your comment right. If you ever listened to the video, I called you up, buddy. He says this goes against what Ubisoft has stated before, that Infinity will be the only game coming and will constantly be expanding upon with multiple games tying into each other. So if this leak is true, I think it's only part of what Infinity will be. My theory is that Infinity will essentially be like one huge game with each new release essentially being like expansions and add-ons, which encompass everything including online content. The old school fans, such as those Helix-inspired missions they dropped hints of a while back, when they see could when when they said they could see the direction heading into one massive world where locations could be revisited. So think a world map consisting of all games, past, future, and present, all depending on what the player spends money on, of course. Where was I on this thing? I took like 2 pictures because it's just so long. Oh yes. I haven't seen anyone pick up on this yet. It would make perfect sense with Ubisoft's copy-paste technique, as all releases would essentially be chapters in one game, Infinity, as the name gives. Which is an interesting point to make, going back to the idea of this would work perfectly with Ubisoft's work, what's the old saying, work smarter, not harder? In their cases, work less, make more.
More money, please.
Again, one of the comments I like in the video is also like Gabo, who says, there is nothing exciting about an always online live service Assassin's Creed, which, again, I have to agree with because Ubisoft can be very greedy. Or they're getting greedy in recent years.
Yeah, well,
Anyways. What time are we at for the video anyways?
We're
Gonna be
4
yammering.
minutes to an hour.
Okay, so we've got a little time left. Admittedly, this again, apologies. This video is a little more bloated and scattered, but there's
This
not really
is
much to talk about with this one.
really, we've mostly just talked about the lore of Assassin's Creed, and frankly, when you think about it, it kind of coincides with how this game might play out. Because I mean, the lore is gonna play a major role on what's gonna happen. But the other thing to consider is if it's really going to be like a multiplayer MMO type thing, then clearly the majority of this is mainly just gonna be a just money grab, really, because
Yeah.
you can't, like, that's the thing, like, you have to kind of make the decision of, do I want to go and put all of my major story points all in this one MMO that I could just go and, you know, kind of have playing for a while, or I could just, you know, have an MMO that kind of only goes through like one little area of my story and just kind of max out the amount of money I could possibly get from it.
So yeah, apologies with going into the lore. I guess you could say I was kind of catching all of you up on the Assassin's Creed timeline, so we kind of know where we stand in terms of where the story is. But we also talked about Infinity too, which is all flipping coin of this video. So apologies if you came here for that and just got a deep dive into the lore. You could say you got two things for the price of one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like the lore is going to really determine. Like, the recent lore is really going to determine what's going to happen. And if anything, I'd probably wager they're probably going to go and have, like, introductions to probably, like, this third faction, maybe, that's just trying to go and create peace or some kind of cohesion between the Assassins and the Templar. Like,
Yeah, that would
I
be
have a
interesting.
feeling
Like
that might end up happening.
create like a third faction where it's like, okay, guys, let's stop
Like,
warring over
they're
the past
not like
10,000 years.
they're not like a faction on the same scale as the Templar or the Assassins, and the fact that like they want to go and change the world. It's more of just a side faction that's just trying to create a connection between the two and get the two to realize that they kind of need each other in order for there to actually be cohesion in the world itself.
It's like, okay, so you're an ancient order of killers and you're basically the Illuminati. Let's work together, people. Let's.
We got a job to do, see? We need both anarchy and stability at the same time.
So, anyways, there's your deep dive into the lore. There's what we know about Infinity. Again, sorry it's so light. There's not much to work with here.
Yeah.
It's basically all hearsay. Again,
It's all,
one
all
rumor
just
I
kind
heard.
of rumors. Like, it's so early in those stages of, hey, game, but is it game?
Yeah, again, like one of the things I heard is again one of the rumors is that again earliest this will probably be coming out is like 2024. So don't expect to hear anything about this concrete wise for a while.
But if
But
anything,
anyways,
we clearly know that Ubisoft is clearly not done with the Assassin's Creed series just yet. They're at least
oh, I
trying to
doubt
go
they ever
and,
will.
well, yeah, but
This is
like,
Ubisoft we're talking
like
about here. They're
if they're thinking about getting an MMO, then clearly they've got something big planned where they want to try to squeeze out a little more money out of it. And
well, all things
'cause-
considered, I probably shouldn't have said MMO because we
yeah,
honestly
but
don't
I
know.
mean,
It feels like just a live service game, which again in the past meant MMO, but with how games are nowadays, it could just
yeah.
be a game that is always a live service, which makes even less sense.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. If you have a single player game that requires online, then there better be a really good reason besides, oh yes, you can trade with other users the items that you've gained in the world. At that point, you're just making a glorified, like, really?
Cool. So what?
Yeah, like at that point, you the only reason you have a trading system is because clearly you made getting certain items nearly impossible. So you kind of have to trade with other people in order to even get them in the first place.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a TF2 player. He knows what he's talking about on that front.
Rarity of items, $2,000, please.
Honestly.
Well, hopefully you enjoyed.
Yep, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Again, apologies, this is so lean. Hopefully there'll be better content to cover next week. again. Well, he said, do the usual contents things, like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends. Let's see
Put
if we
down
can
a
get to, like,
comment if you want to see more gaming. Gaming of the Assassin's Creed. Maybe they make online game more friends.
I will
Maybe they
hint.
make trading system, and the only reason for online service is to connect to other people to trade. Who knows? We'll see. Put comment
I'll give
below.
you.
Tell us what you think, perhaps.
I'll give you a hint. Recently, I've come into a position where I may or may not be able to play Infinite, maybe on the new console. So we might do a review for that. Actually,
Gaming moment.
you've got you've got it on. Did you get it on computer yet, or do you?
I haven't. Okay. Real quick for anyone, Halo Infinite. I have not pre-ordered Halo Infinite on Steam for PC. Why? One, I don't.
It's on PC.
Well, no. One. I don't really want to waste more money than I already have. I've spent a lot of money so far this year. I'd like to at least wait. Two, I'm probably going to give it a month or two after Halo Infinite actually comes out. That way I can see a little bit more gameplay of the actual game, and then determine if I actually want to get it or not. Because here's my thing. I'll be honest with you, Chief. I only really like Halo Reach and Halo CE. Because those are the two games that just really resonate with me. But
Especially the mass genocide at the end of the game in Reach.
But I'll probably get Infinite at some point, mainly just because of the story. I probably never gonna get Halo 5 because that kind of requires an Xbox and all that, and I don't have.
If you ever come over to my place, we can.
I
play.
might.
I'll bring out my Halo 5 copy.
I mean, if I look at my Halo collection, I still don't have Halo 2. But I do have it on my Master Chief collection, so hey, what you gonna do?
So, we may do a review because I may do that.
Perhaps.
We'll see
it soon enough.
My reason for not waiting, more or less, is because I know that because it's Halo, give it a week and half the internet will be loaded with spoilers for the story. And
well, I'm fine with spoilers. I mean, I already have.
I'm not.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm pretty sure I already know how the story is gonna play out in its entirety. But I'm fine with spoilers because I mean, when you really think about it, every Halo game is basically yes, go find X guy, kill X guy, and then somehow save world. Yes, I do a little saving. The universe is safe for 5 minutes.
For 5 minutes, another 5 minutes. God damn it,
Cortana!
Yes, what did you do?
Another person who wants to go and fire all the Halo rings, thinking that it will be the pathway to salvation.
I doubt that'll be what happens, honestly. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Anyways.
Hopefully you all enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yep, and again, share with your friends. Let's see if we can get to 20 subscribers by December. I at least want to see if we can do that. I would really like that.
Subscribe! Do it now. If you're watching, do it.
Alright. In the words of the immortal Red Green, I'm pulling for you. We're all in this together. Good night.